My wife's daughter humiliated me in front of the entire family. When I complained, my wife cut me off immediately. You're not her father. Don't demand respect. I just smiled. The next day, I cut everything off. Her college, her apartment, her car, her phone, and her credit card. Everything vanished. I didn't say a single word when she came up and slapped me across the face. It was my stepdaughter's 21st birthday dinner, an expensive steakhouse. 20 relatives at the table, and I was paying the $3,000 bill. All I had done was ask Chloe to lower her voice because she was mocking the waiter. She didn't just react badly. She exploded. "You're a pathetic loser, Michael," she spat, her voice echoing through the suddenly silent restaurant. "You're just the guy who pays the bills. You have zero authority over me. You're nothing but a bank account with a receding hairline." Then she threw her wine glass. Red wine soaked through my white shirt. I looked at my wife, Emily, expecting her to step in, defend me, at least look horrified. Instead, Emily leaned closer and whispered loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "Sit down, Michael. You're embarrassing her. You're not her father. Don't demand respect from a girl who owes you nothing." The table burst into laughter. The laughter lasted less than it felt like it did. 5, maybe 6 seconds. But in my mind, it hung in the air like someone had held down a piano key too long. I saw Emily's cousin cover her mouth with her napkin. I saw Uncle Richard stare at his plate with a crooked smile. I saw the cousin's husband lean over and whisper something into her ear that made her laugh again, this time quieter. I saw Chloe, still standing there with the empty glass in her hand, drop it onto the table with a hard clink before sitting back down, satisfied. Emily, beside me, didn't even look at me. She picked up her napkin from her lap, folded it twice, and set it neatly beside her plate. Then she took a sip of water. The calmness of it all was what stunned me the most. Like she had just settled a minor inconvenience. I stayed seated. The wine dripped down the collar of my shirt in a cold line against my skin. I could smell the sweet acidity of the Cabernet. I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes pretending not to look at me. The waiter Chloe had been mocking approached with a white towel in his hands and stopped about 3 feet away, unsure whether to come closer. I gave him a small gesture that meant, "It's fine." He nodded and stepped away. I didn't answer Emily. I didn't answer Chloe. I didn't look at anyone who had laughed. I picked up my napkin, carefully wiped my chin and neck, folded the napkin into quarters, and placed it beside my untouched glass of white wine. "Dessert?" Emily's sister called from the other end of the table in a high-pitched voice, clearly trying to change the subject. She waved at the waiter. "Can we get dessert menus?" The waiter returned with 11 menus and passed them around the table. When he reached me, he handed mine over with a small nod. I opened it, read every line carefully. Dark chocolate tart with sea salt, Madagascar vanilla creme brulee, yuzu cheesecake, artisan ice cream trio. I read the prices too. 24, 26, 22, 18. If all 20 people ordered dessert, it would add another $450 to the bill, plus coffee, plus after-dinner drinks, plus tip. "I'm getting the cheesecake," Chloe announced loudly, as if nothing had happened, "and a double espresso." "I'll take the chocolate tart," said Emily's cousin. "Creme brulee for me," Uncle Richard added. Everyone ordered. Emily's sister even wrote down the choices on her napkin like she was officially managing the birthday dinner. When it reached my turn, I looked up from the menu. "I'm not having anything," I said calmly. Emily's sister paused for half a second too long, unsure how to react. Emily stayed perfectly still beside me. "Are you sure, Michael?" her sister asked with a polite smile. "Yes." "Well, all right." The waiter collected the menus and walked away. Conversation slowly returned around the table in smaller groups. Vacations, traffic, someone's new house. No one spoke to me. I sat there in my stained shirt, hands resting on my lap, staring at the centerpiece of white hydrangeas leaning slightly toward my side of the table. And in those next few minutes, I thought about strange things. I thought about my father, who had died 2 years earlier. I remembered something he once told me when I was 32 and about to marry Emily. We had been standing alone in his kitchen while he poured coffee. Without looking at me, he had said, "Son, some women choose you because they love you. Others choose you because you're useful." At the time, I had dismissed it as bitter old man advice. Now, sitting there with wine soaking into my shirt, the sentence came back with the clarity of something spoken 5 minutes ago. Then my thoughts became more practical. Automatic payments, monthly withdrawals, Every contract I had signed over the years, every guarantee, every authorization, and how many of those signatures were still active at that exact moment while I sat there humiliated in that restaurant? Probably all of them. I started mentally listing them one by one. Chloe's tuition came directly out of my checking account every semester. Her apartment lease was in her name, but I was the guarantor. The car loan was under my credit. The family phone plan, 5 lines. My account, the supplementary credit card, my signature as the primary holder, health insurance, car insurance, gym memberships, streaming subscriptions, everything. 14, 15, 16 separate payments, maybe more. Every one of them had a phone number, a customer service department, a cancellation process. I estimated the timing in my head. If I started at 7:30 the next morning, I could shut everything down before noon. "Michael, are you all right?" Emily's mother asked from across the table. It was the first time anyone had spoken directly to me since the wine incident. I looked up, smiled slightly. "I'm perfect," I said. She nodded awkwardly and returned to her coffee. Emily finally turned toward me. For the first time in 15 minutes, she actually looked at my face. She expected anger, humiliation, something. But whatever she saw there, she didn't recognize it. Her eyebrows pulled together slightly, like someone trying to read a language they thought they understood. "Are you really okay?" She whispered softly enough that only I could hear. "Yes." "Michael, about Chloe. You don't need to explain anything." "What do you mean I don't need to explain anything?" "I mean exactly that." She stared at me, waiting for more, waiting for me to accuse her, defend myself, raise my voice, give her something she could respond to. I gave her nothing. I looked back at the hydrangeas and waited for dinner to end. Desserts arrived. I didn't eat. Coffee arrived. I didn't touch that either. When the waiter discreetly slid the check beside me, exactly as arranged earlier that night, I glanced at the total, 3,047 zart. I pulled out my card without looking at the itemized receipt, placed it on the tray. The waiter returned a few minutes later with the slip to sign. I signed it, put the card back into my wallet. Then I left $200 in cash on top of the bill. That was the last bill I was ever going to pay for them. I didn't say it out loud. Not to Emily, not to Chloe, not to anyone. I said it only inside my own head, with the same calmness I had used while reading the dessert menu earlier. Dinner ended a little after 11. People started standing, putting on coats, hugging each other near the entrance. Someone suggested a group photo. Emily's sister organized everyone against the back wall. Chloe stood proudly in the center, still glowing with birthday girl arrogance. Emily stood beside her. Someone motioned for me to join. I walked over and stood at the far right side, as far from Chloe as possible, Emily between us. The cousin's boyfriend held up the phone. 1, 2, 3, I smiled. The picture was taken. Afterward, Emily's mother walked over and hugged me. She squeezed my shoulders affectionately, the way she always did, and whispered, "Don't take Chloe seriously. You know how she gets when she drinks." I lightly returned the hug with one hand, smiled politely, said nothing. The three of us left the restaurant together. Chloe walked several steps ahead, laughing into her phone with one of her friends. Emily walked silently beside me. When we reached the car, Chloe climbed into the back seat without waiting for anyone to open the door. "You driving?" Emily asked. "Yes." I drove the 25 minutes home without saying a word. Emily stared out the passenger window. Chloe stayed on her phone the entire ride. When we pulled into the garage, Chloe got out first and walked into the house without saying goodnight, straight upstairs. Emily stayed seated in the car for another moment. "You coming in?" I asked before she could. The normal question would have been the opposite. She looked at me strangely. "Yes, of course." We went inside. Emily headed upstairs to change. I remained in the kitchen, still wearing the wine-stained shirt. Some parts were damp. Others had already dried stiff against the fabric. I opened the refrigerator. Wasn't hungry. Closed it. Poured myself a glass of water and drank it slowly while staring out the kitchen window into the dark backyard. When I finally went upstairs, Emily was already sitting on the bed in pajamas with her phone in her hand. She looked up when I entered. "Aren't you going to change?" "I'm taking a shower first." "Michael, listen." I waited, expected an apology, a softer explanation, something. Instead, she said, "Tomorrow you need to talk to Chloe. Apologize to her. This can't keep going with both of you angry. She's very sensitive." I looked at her. Didn't answer. Walked into the bathroom. Closed the door. Dropped the stained shirt onto the floor. The shower lasted longer than usual. When I came back out, Emily was asleep, or pretending to be. At that moment, both possibilities felt exactly the same. I put on pajamas, climbed into bed on my side, and stared at the ceiling for nearly an hour. I didn't think about the humiliation, didn't think about the laughter, didn't think about Chloe's words or Emily's. I thought about the list: 14, 15, 16 separate accounts, customer service numbers, business hours, the most efficient order for the calls, the university first because it opened earliest and mattered most, then the bank to stop the automatic payments before Emily noticed anything, then the leasing office, then everything else. At 5:30 in the morning, I got up, dressed quietly in the dark bedroom, took my keys, my wallet, my phone, didn't look at Emily. I walked downstairs barefoot, put my shoes on in the kitchen, and left. I drove to my office, arrived at 6:10. The night security guard greeted me like it was any ordinary day. I took the elevator to the 11th floor, turned on only the lamp at my desk, started my computer, opened a blank spreadsheet, and began writing the list. When I finished, it was 6:42 a.m., 16 exact entries, 48 minutes until the university treasury office opened. I got a cup of water from the hallway dispenser, returned to my chair, looked at the list, looked at the clock, waited. At 7:31, I made the first call, the university. A woman with a pleasant voice answered on the second ring. I gave my name, the student account number, the last 4 digits of my card. Then I told her I was withdrawing my authorization as an external payer, effective immediately, and that any remaining tuition balance would need to be handled directly with the student. Would you like to speak with an advisor before proceeding? No. You understand this may affect the student's academic standing? Yes. Are you absolutely certain? Yes. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I hung up. At 7:40, I called the bank, canceled the automatic payments, the car, the insurance, the gym, streaming services, the phone plan. The representative read them one by one while I answered with a simple yes. Each yes felt shorter than the last 12 minutes. Then I hung up. At 8 o'clock, I called the leasing office. The manager hadn't arrived yet. I left my number. He called back at 8:20. Michael, hey, everything all right with the apartment? I need to remove myself as guarantor. A short pause. The manager had known me for 3 years. He knew the tenant was my stepdaughter. Is there a problem, Michael? No, I'm simply withdrawing my guarantee. If you do that, she won't qualify to renew the lease. I understand. Would you like me to contact her? Yes, formally, in writing. I'll handle it today. 5 minutes. I hung up. At 8:30, I called the dealership, asked about the process for voluntary vehicle surrender. The woman explained the procedure. I took notes in a small notebook, told her I'd call back later with a date. 4 minutes. At 8:40, I called the phone company, removed Chloe's line from the family plan. The operator asked for confirmation from the account holder. I explained the account was entirely under my name. She requested the security code. I gave it to her. Chloe's phone service was disconnected in real time. 3 minutes. The supplementary credit card was the final item. The bank representative asked, "Would you like to issue a replacement card for another authorized user?" No. Is the card holder aware this card is being canceled? That's a family matter I'll handle personally. The card was blocked instantly. Any attempt to use it after that moment would be declined. It was 9:13 a.m., 1 hour and 42 minutes. I stood up from my chair and walked toward the office window. Morning light stretched in long golden lines between the buildings downtown. I watched a woman crossing the street holding coffee in one hand and her phone in the other, laughing at something. A city bus stopped at the corner. A businessman checked his watch impatiently. Then I returned to my desk. The spreadsheet was still open. One by one, I crossed out every completed line. All 16 were crossed out. Helen arrived at 9:30. I heard her greeting the security guard, turning on her computer, setting down her purse. A few minutes later, she knocked gently on my office door. "Good morning, Michael." "Morning. Would you like coffee?" "Yes, please." Helen had worked with me for 12 years. She looked at me for 1 second longer than usual, but asked no questions. When she returned with the coffee, she placed it quietly on my desk. I took a sip. It was good. At 9:47, my personal phone vibrated inside the desk drawer. Emily. I didn't answer. At 9:51, it vibrated again. 9:55, 10:02, 10:05. The first text message arrived, then the second. then the third. 27 messages over the next 30 minutes. I read none of them. I silenced the phone completely and placed it back into the drawer. At 10:45, the direct office line rang. Only 5 people had that number. I stared at the phone. 3 rings. 4. Then I answered. Michael. Emily's voice, hoarse. Emily. Where are you? At the office. Chloe called me. The university told her you withdrew tuition payments. The leasing office called. The dealership called. The phone company called. What is happening? What you said last night. What? What you said last night. Silence. I heard her inhale sharply. Then her tone changed. No longer confused, now cautious. Like someone beginning to realize the ground beneath them had shifted. Michael, we need to talk. Yes. Tonight. At home. I won't be home tonight. What? I'm staying at the office. We'll talk when I decide we will. Michael, this isn't how you solve things. I'm not solving anything, I'm acting. Then I hung up. A few seconds later, Helen knocked softly on my office door. Michael, there's someone at reception asking to see you. No appointment. Says it's urgent. Who is it? Your mother-in-law. I looked up slowly. Helen stood there with her usual calm expression, but I could tell she already understood something fundamental had changed. Tell her I don't accept walk-ins. But, would you like me to suggest another time? No. She nodded once and closed the door. I looked back at the spreadsheet. 16 crossed-out lines. Then I closed the file without saving it. Opened my calendar. Crossed out the reminder that said, home, 6 p.m. Replaced it with, dinner alone. At 11:30, I called my accountant. I had known Frank for 9 years. I told him I needed a complete review of every transaction made on the supplementary credit card over the last 24 months, and I wanted it that same afternoon. Anything specific you're looking for? He asked. Everything. At 2:10, Helen informed me Frank had arrived. I told her to send him in. Frank carried a thick folder and a laptop. He sat across from me, opened the computer, and turned the screen in my direction. Before we begin, he said carefully, I need to ask if you're sure you want to see this. Yes. There are things here I didn't expect to find. Show me. Frank pointed to the first column. Charges well above the normal spending limit, repeated over 23 months. At first, they had been small, then larger, boutiques, restaurants, luxury hotels, spas, a cosmetic clinic, a travel agency, an online course that cost $4,000 and had never been completed. How much total? I asked. $42,800. In 2 years? 23 months. I stared at the screen. Oddly enough, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally finish a puzzle and realize the picture had always been obvious, just scattered. These charges were approved by the supplementary card holder, I said. Yes. But there's something else. Frank opened another window. Monthly account statements. Every one of them digitally signed by Emily in her role as household financial administrator. Your wife approved these statements 23 months in a row without dispute. You're sure she signed them? I have the scanned signatures. I can compare them to your marriage certificate if you'd like. That won't be necessary. Frank waited. He knew enough to stay silent until I asked. Anything else? Yes. He opened another tab. A pattern of hotel expenses appeared on the screen. Same hotel. A city 3 hours away. 12 visits over 23 months. Double rooms. Room service. Spa charges. Restaurant bills. Chloe? I asked. The supplementary card was used, but I don't believe these charges were hers. Frank pointed at the dates. They match your wife's supposed work trips, the same trips you listed when we filed her travel deductions. I rested both hands against the desk. Didn't respond immediately. So Emily used Chloe's card? That's the most likely explanation. The signatures? Chloe's signature appears on the hotel receipts, but the dates don't match her university schedule or travel records. They match Emily's. So Chloe signed the receipts for her? That's what it looks like. Frank half closed the laptop and leaned forward. One more thing. The account statements were signed by Emily, but the email address receiving the fraud alerts wasn't yours. I looked up. It wasn't? No, it was a Gmail account not listed in the original contract. Whose? Emily's. How do you know? Because the account was linked to her phone number, and the phone plan was under your name. He paused. When you shut off the phone plan this morning, the security verification failed, and all pending alerts automatically rerouted to the primary account holder, me. This morning, Frank continued, your personal inbox received every pending alert from the last 6 months. I opened my personal email. 29 unread alerts sat there grouped together by date. Charges above spending limits. Potential unauthorized activity. Late payment reminders. Transactions categorized as lodging and entertainment. I closed the inbox without opening them individually. Frank. Yes? I need a full report. Dates, amounts, businesses, locations, and a comparison with Emily's travel schedule. Digital and printed copies? Yes. When do you need it? Friday. Done. I nodded once, then added, and I need the name of a divorce attorney, a good one. Discreet. Frank didn't ask questions. He pulled a sheet of paper from his folder, wrote down a name and phone number, then slid it across the desk. She's the best in the city. Tell her I referred you. Thank you. Frank packed up his laptop. At the door, he stopped and looked back at me. Michael, are you all right? Yes, you seem calm. I am. He nodded and left. I remained alone in the office. I looked at the attorney's name, folded the paper in half, placed it inside my top drawer. Then I reopened my personal email, selected all 29 alerts, and moved them into a new folder titled Documentation. At 4:30, Helen knocked again. Michael, the reservation for 7 o'clock has been confirmed. Table for 1. Thank you, Helen. One more thing. Your wife called 4 more times. I told her you were in meetings all day. Thank you. Helen lingered at the doorway for a second. Do you need anything else? Not right now. She closed the door. I reopened the drawer, took out the folded paper, dialed the number. The attorney's assistant gave me an appointment for Thursday at 10 in the morning. I slept at the office for 4 nights. The 5th night, I stayed at a hotel. The 6th night, too. Thursday morning at 10, I met the attorney. Her name was Margaret. She greeted me with coffee and a yellow legal pad. I handed her Frank's folder. She reviewed everything silently for nearly 20 minutes. Finally, she looked up. Michael, with what you've brought me, this divorce can be clean or devastating. Your choice, clean. Are you sure? You have grounds for much more. I don't want more. I paused. I want it finished. Margaret nodded and started taking notes. We spent the next few hours working through the terms. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Helen called the new phone I had asked her to get for me. Michael, your wife is here. Alone? She's with Chloe. I thought for a moment. Tell them I'll see them in 15 minutes. Small conference room. Not my office. I arrived at the office at 2:22. Emily and Chloe were sitting side by side at the small conference table, each with a glass of water. Emily stood when I entered. Chloe didn't. Michael, thank you for seeing us, Emily said. I sat across from them. Didn't answer. Chloe wants to say something. I looked at Chloe. Her arms were crossed tightly. I'm sorry about the wine, she muttered without looking directly at me. I was upset. I didn't think about what I said. All right, she blinked. All right? Yes. She waited. Emily waited too. Both of them expected more. I gave them nothing. So now what? Chloe asked. What do you mean? Are you giving my stuff back? No. Her expression hardened immediately. What do you mean, no? I mean exactly that. I folded my hands calmly on the table. You or your mother can pay for college. The apartment lease is canceled. The car gets returned next week. The card stays blocked. If you want a phone, open an account under your own name. Chloe opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked at Emily. Emily looked at me. Michael, you can't do this. It's already done. She's our daughter. She's your daughter. I held Emily's gaze. And she's 21 years old. Emily took a slow breath. Her tone changed completely. Soft now. Careful. Michael, I know you're hurt because of the birthday dinner. I'm sorry. Truly. What I said was wrong. I looked at her steadily. Emily, I said quietly, do you recognize the charges from the Alameda Hotel? Everything in her face froze. Chloe looked between us. What? She asked. The Alameda Hotel? 12 visits over the last 23 months, I continued calmly. Paid using Chloe's supplementary card. Emily didn't answer. Chloe's eyes widened. Wait, was that the Sedona trip, Mom? The one you said was for work? Emily kept staring at me. Her face had changed. No longer the face of someone trying to negotiate. Now it was the face of someone calculating exactly how much I knew. Michael, she said carefully, that's something we can discuss another time. There is no other time. We can talk privately. We talk now, or we don't talk at all. Emily swallowed. Michael, I stood up. Margaret, my attorney, will contact both of you sometime this week. I looked at Emily first. For you, regarding the divorce, then at Chloe. For you, regarding the unauthorized charges on your card. $42,800 over 23 months. What? Chloe nearly shouted. Unauthorized charges? What are you talking about? The receipts you signed. I didn't sign anything. Yes, you did. Every hotel receipt, every boutique purchase. I kept my voice level. Your signature appears on every document. If you claim those weren't yours, then it becomes identity fraud and potentially a criminal matter. If you admit they were yours, then it becomes debt. I paused. You can decide which one it is. Chloe stared at her mother. Emily didn't look back at her. Mom, Chloe whispered. Say something. Emily said nothing. I walked out of the conference room and returned to my office, closed the door behind me. A few minutes later, Helen appeared quietly. They left. Together? Yes. But they were arguing. At 6 o'clock, I received a message from the leasing office. The apartment lease would not be renewed. The tenant had until the final day of the month to vacate the property. At 7:30 that night, Emily called my new number. Michael. Emily, are you coming home? No, Chloe has nowhere to stay after the 1st of the month. She can stay with you. Michael, that's your home too. No, I leaned back in my chair. That house was purchased by me in cash before we got married. It's in my name. And I'm selling it. Silence. Long silence. Finally, she asked quietly, When did you decide all this? I closed my eyes briefly. Emily, I didn't decide this in 1 week. Then I opened them again. You decided it over 15 years. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice, and I hung up. That night, I ate alone at the restaurant where Helen had made my reservation. I ordered the steak I had always wanted but never allowed myself to buy, aged ribeye, medium rare. I ate slowly. The waiter asked if I was expecting someone. No. Dessert? No, thank you. Just the check. I paid with my primary card, left cash on the table for the tip, then walked out alone. Margaret called Tuesday morning. Emily had hired an attorney, a well-known one. The first meeting between both legal teams was scheduled for Friday. Michael, Margaret said, your wife wants to negotiate before the hearing. She's asking to speak with you privately. What for? She didn't say. What do you recommend? That you hear her out once, with me present. I agreed. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday at 5 in the afternoon at Margaret's office. I arrived 10 minutes early. Emily was already there, alone. No attorney. She wore a dark blue dress I had never seen before. Her hands rested stiffly in her lap. Before leading me inside, Margaret spoke quietly near the doorway. She asked to speak with you alone, she said. I refused. I'll stay in the room, but I'll let her begin. I nodded and walked in. Sat across from Emily. Margaret sat farther down the table with her legal pad. Emily looked directly at me. Before lawyers, before paperwork, before any of this, she began softly. I want to ask you for one thing. I'm listening. Stop. Stop what? This. The divorce. Selling the house. The debt agreements with Chloe. All of it. And in exchange? We start over. Her voice trembled slightly now. Therapy. Counseling. Whatever you want. I'll take responsibility for the $42,800. I'll sign a written confession if I have to. Anything. I stared at her for several seconds. Then asked, Who is the man from the Alameda Hotel? Emily glanced briefly toward Margaret. Margaret didn't look up from her notes. Michael, Emily whispered. That doesn't matter anymore. It matters. It's someone who's no longer in my life. When did it end? 4 months ago. Who is he? Emily inhaled slowly. A client from work. Someone I met 2 years ago. She looked exhausted suddenly. Please don't make me say more here. You're not here because of me, I replied calmly. You're here because of you. Emily lowered her eyes. For the first time in 15 years, I saw her without the performance. No confidence, no control, just someone tired of holding together a lie. Michael, she said quietly, I know I ruined everything. I know the birthday dinner was the final straw, but we spent 15 years together. 15 years can't disappear in 1 week. I leaned back slightly. Emily. I didn't erase those 15 years. My voice remained calm. You erased them every time you signed a statement knowing there were hotel charges from the place where you were meeting him. I paused. Every time you let Chloe sign receipts to cover for you. Another pause. And every time you sat me at a family table so I could pay the bill for people helping you humiliate me. Emily looked up again. Her eyes were wet now, but she wasn't crying. That's not fair. No, I said softly. It's exact. She stared at me silently. Then finally whispered, I loved you. I almost smiled. 2 years ago, I said. My father told me something I didn't understand at the time. I folded my hands together. He said there are women who choose you because they love you, and women who choose you because you're useful. I looked directly into her eyes. He was right. Emily closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them again. So there's nothing I can do? Yes, I answered. You can sign the papers Margaret sends you on Friday. You can take responsibility for the $42,800 so Chloe doesn't end up with a fraud investigation. And you can stop calling my new phone. Emily stared down at the table, then quietly asked, Are you going to tell Chloe about the hotel? No. Why not? Because it isn't my story to tell. I paused. If you want your daughter to know who you really are, then you tell her. Emily stayed silent. One more thing, I added. She looked up. I am selling the house, but not immediately. I'll wait 3 months so the two of you can figure things out first. Emily nodded slowly. Picked up her purse. Stood. For a second she just looked at me. Then asked the question I think she already knew the answer to. Do you really not love me anymore? I held her gaze. Emily, I stopped loving you a long time ago. A small pause. I just didn't admit it to myself until Chloe's birthday. Emily left the room without another word. Margaret quietly closed her notebook. That was the right thing to do, she said. I know. How do you feel? I thought about it honestly before answering. Fine. That night, for the first time in 12 days, I drove back to the house. Emily wasn't there. Chloe wasn't there either. The place felt hollow, silent. I went upstairs to the bedroom and opened the closet, took out 2 suitcases, packed my clothes, my books, personal documents, the framed photograph of my father, the watch he had left me. Then I carried the suitcases downstairs and loaded them into the car. Before leaving, I walked into the study. There was an envelope on the desk with my name written in Emily's handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a 3-page letter. I read it standing up. It wasn't an apology. It was an explanation about the client, about loneliness, about how everything had started, about Chloe, and how Chloe supposedly knew nothing, about a feeling Emily described as losing herself. When I finished reading, I folded the pages carefully and slipped them back into the envelope. Then I left it on the desk. I didn't take it with me. I turned off the lights, locked the front door, and drove back to the hotel where I'd been staying. At 1 a.m, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I checked the message. My name is Daniel Rivera. I need to speak with you. It's about Chloe. I know it's late. Call me when you can. I stared at the screen for several seconds, saved the number, turned off the light, and went to sleep. I called Daniel Rivera Thursday morning at 9. We met at a small coffee shop near my office. He was a man in his early 50s, thin, plain clothes, a worn leather folder tucked under his arm. Thank you for meeting me, Mr. Michael. Just Michael, he nodded. Michael, I'm Chloe's biological father. That didn't surprise me. Something inside me had already expected it. How did you find me? I've been trying to contact Chloe for years, he explained quietly. Emily changed numbers, changed addresses twice. My letters kept coming back. He hesitated. Last week, I saw a leasing notice connected to your name. It mentioned the guarantor for my daughter's apartment had withdrawn support. I found your company after that. What do you want from me? Nothing from you, he said immediately. I just want to know if Chloe even knows I exist. She doesn't. Daniel nodded slowly, not shocked, almost like he had rehearsed hearing that answer for years. Did Emily tell her I was dead? Yes, he lowered his eyes briefly. For 16 years, I've paid child support every month. he said quietly. Emily never allowed me to see her. He opened the folder and pushed it toward me. Inside were copies of monthly payments dating back 16 years, returned letters stamped unknown recipient, court documents, restraining orders that had later been dismissed for lack of evidence. Every page carried Emily's signature. Why come now? I asked. Because Chloe turned 21. He folded his hands together. I'm no longer a father trying to force rights onto a child. I'm just a man who wants his daughter to have the option of deciding whether she wants to know me. He gave a faint smile. That's why I waited. I closed the folder and handed it back. Daniel, I'm not the person who should give Chloe this information. It isn't my story. I understand. I thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. I'll give you my attorney's number, Margaret. She can explain how to contact Chloe legally without going through Emily. Daniel's expression softened immediately. Thank you. One more thing, I added. When Chloe meets you, if she chooses to, my name stays out of it. Of course, I'm not part of that conversation. You won't be. We finished our coffee in silence. Then I paid the bill and left. The divorce was finalized 2 months later. Emily accepted every condition. She took responsibility for the $42,800 and arranged a payment plan. Chloe signed an agreement acknowledging the debt under her name, but Emily officially assumed it to avoid fraud charges. The house remained legally mine. Emily moved into a rented apartment. 4 months after the divorce was finalized, I sold the house. Then I bought another one, smaller, in a different neighborhood. No memories attached to it. Chloe got a job as a cashier, then another job at a coffee shop. Later, she enrolled in a public university with a partial scholarship. She paid the remaining tuition herself while working. Daniel and Chloe met 6 months after my conversation with him. Margaret had guided him through the legal process exactly as promised. Chloe called me the same afternoon she met him. It was the first time she'd called me since the conference room. Michael! Chloe, I met my biological father today. I know. Silence. Then, you knew? Yes. For how long? Since before your mother signed the divorce papers. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't my place to. A long pause followed. Then she asked quietly, Can I buy you coffee sometime? Yes. We met the following Saturday. Chloe arrived 15 minutes late. She wore simple clothes, no makeup. She looked thinner, older somehow. She didn't hug me. Hi, Michael. Hi, Chloe. She sat down and ordered black coffee. She didn't talk about Daniel, didn't talk about Emily either. She talked about work, classes, the tiny room she was renting near campus. I listened. When the coffee was nearly finished, she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, set it on the table between us. What's this? The first $250 toward the $42,800. I looked at the envelope. I know my mother is paying it, Chloe continued quietly, but I want to pay you back myself, month by month, every dollar. Chloe. Please, Michael. I studied her face for several seconds, then took the envelope and slipped it into my coat pocket. One more thing, she said softly. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me for what I said at my birthday dinner. She swallowed hard. But I've spent 6 months thinking about those words, and I still can't find a single reason why I thought I had the right to say them. I didn't answer immediately. Finally, I said, I don't have to forgive you. She looked up. I just need to be able to look at you without feeling what I felt that night, a pause. And today, I can. Chloe nodded slowly, didn't cry. When the check arrived, she paid for her own coffee. We walked together to the parking lot afterward. Before leaving, she extended her hand toward me. I shook it. Thanks for coming, Michael. Thanks for calling, Chloe. I drove home. The new home. Parked in the garage, went upstairs, opened the kitchen window, made myself dinner, and ate alone at the table with my father's photograph leaning against the wall across from me. At 8 o'clock, Margaret texted me. Everything finalized. Final documents are in your email. I replied, Thank you, Margaret. Then I turned off my phone. Poured myself a glass of wine and raised it slightly in silence, not toward anyone. Just a small gesture above the kitchen table. The stained white shirt was still inside a drawer at the office. I had never thrown it away. Never shown it to anyone. Never used it against anybody. It stayed there folded neatly. A reminder of the final night of something that had already died long before the wine ever touched the fabric. I took the first sip, and it tasted just fine.